She doesn't belong here.
A judge's gavel crashes down. The screen bursts to life. A packed courtroom. Television cameras. Journalists squeezing into every aisle. Lawyers whispering urgently. No one smiles. Today's hearing isn't just about a will. It's about an empire worth billions of dollars. At the center of it all, a simple woman in a charcoal gray dress stands quietly near the back of the courtroom. Her hands are clasped tightly around a worn leather folder. She keeps her eyes lowered. She looks like she wishes she could disappear. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. And in less than 10 minutes, every person in this courtroom will know it. The heavy courtroom doors swing shut. A clerk announces, "All rise." Everyone stands. The judge enters. As people take their seats again, one chair scrapes loudly across the polished floor. Daniel Harrison rises instead. Expensive navy suit. Perfect haircut. The confidence of a man who's spent his entire life believing the future already belongs to him. He doesn't look at the judge. He looks directly at Sarah. His voice is calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that hides contempt. "Excuse me, Your Honor." The room turns toward him. "I believe there's been a mistake." He gestures toward Sarah without even saying her name. "The reading of my father's will is a private family matter." Pause. Long enough for every eye to shift toward Sarah. Then, "Our housekeeper has somehow found her way inside." A few restrained chuckles ripple through the gallery. Sarah doesn't react. She simply lowers her eyes. Victoria Harrison leans toward her attorney and speaks just loudly enough for nearby reporters to hear. "Richard always had trouble saying no to people." She glances at Sarah. "Apparently, even after his death." Another wave of quiet laughter. Still, Sarah says nothing. Then, a wooden cane slips from an elderly woman's hand. It clatters across the courtroom floor. No one moves. Not the executives. Not the lawyers. Not the reporters. Sarah steps forward. She kneels, picks up the cane, places it gently back into the woman's hand. "Take your time, ma'am." The elderly woman smiles. "Thank you, dear." Sarah nods once and quietly returns to her place. No speech, no drama, just kindness. From across the room, Michael Brooks notices everything. He closes his eyes for the briefest moment, almost as if Richard's prediction has already begun to come true. Michael rises slowly. The room falls silent. He places a thick envelope on the podium. Its red wax seal catches the light. Daniel relaxes into his chair, certain the future is about to unfold exactly as he planned. Michael looks at the envelope, then at the courtroom, then at Sarah. He breaks the seal. The sound echoes in the silence. He unfolds the document carefully. His voice is steady. "Before I read the last will and testament of Richard Harrison." He pauses, not for effect, because Richard instructed him to. Every heartbeat in the room seems louder now. Michael lifts his eyes. "There is one person Mr. Harrison specifically instructed me to acknowledge first." Daniel's confident smile fades. Victoria slowly straightens in her chair. Sarah looks confused. Michael inhales, then speaks the name that changes everything. "Miss Sarah Mitchell." 3 weeks earlier, the rain had just stopped. Morning sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the Harrison estate in a warm golden glow. Gardeners trimmed hedges. Delivery trucks arrived through the front gate. Inside the mansion, another workday had quietly begun. To the outside world, it looked like another ordinary morning. It wasn't. Richard Harrison stood alone in the library, staring through a floor-to-ceiling window. in the reflection of the glass. He barely recognized the man looking back. His suit still fit perfectly. His posture still commanded respect. But illness had taken something money couldn't buy back. Time. A soft knock interrupted the silence. "Come in." The door opened gently. Sarah entered, balancing a breakfast tray. Oatmeal, fresh fruit, black coffee. The same breakfast she had prepared every weekday for the past 3 years. She placed the tray on the table. Then, without saying a word, she noticed the untouched medication beside his chair. She picked up the small bottle and smiled. "Trying to negotiate with your doctor again?" Richard looked guilty. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice." Sarah folded her arms. 8 years, Mr. Harrison." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You should know by now that I notice everything." Richard laughed. A genuine laugh. The kind his own house hadn't heard in months. As Sarah poured his coffee, Richard watched her quietly. Not because she worked for him, because she never acted as if she did. She treated the mansion as though it were someone's home, not just someone's property. She straightened a family photograph that had tilted slightly on the bookshelf. She noticed a dying flower and replaced it with a fresh one from the vase she carried. She opened the curtains a little wider so the morning light reached Richard's favorite chair. She never announced what she was doing. She simply cared. Richard took one sip of coffee, then another. A violent cough interrupted him. He reached for a handkerchief. When he pulled it away, a small spot of blood stained the white fabric. Sarah saw it. Her smile vanished instantly. She reached for the telephone. Richard gently caught her wrist. Not forcefully. Just enough to stop her. "Please!" His voice was calm. "Not today." Sarah hesitated. "The doctor said?" "I know what the doctor said." Silence settled between them. Finally, Sarah lowered the phone. But she didn't hide her concern. Richard looked out toward the gardens again. A groundskeeper struggled to push a heavy cart through the wet grass. Before Richard could say anything, Sarah quietly excused herself. He watched through the window. She walked outside, took hold of the cart, and together, they pushed it up the hill. The groundskeeper laughed. Sarah laughed too. A moment later, she brushed the mud from her shoes and returned inside as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Richard smiled to himself. He opened a small leather notebook resting on the desk. He wrote just 6 words. "Still serving when nobody is watching." Then he closed it. Minutes later, the study door opened without a knock. Daniel Harrison entered while reading emails on his phone. "Dad, the board approved the Chicago acquisition." No greeting. No eye contact. Richard looked at him, then glanced toward the untouched breakfast. "Good morning, Daniel." Daniel looked up, almost surprised. "Morning." Richard waited, just for a second, perhaps hoping his son would ask how he was feeling. Instead, Daniel placed another file on the desk. "These contracts need your signature today." Richard signed nothing. He simply asked, "Daniel." "Yes." "What's the name of the man who has taken care of these gardens for the last 15 years? Daniel frowned. He looked through the window. The gardener continued working. "I don't know." Richard nodded slowly. Not in anger, in disappointment. "His name is Thomas." Another pause. "He sent flowers when your mother died." Daniel lowered his eyes. He genuinely hadn't known. Just then, Sarah returned with a clean handkerchief. She quietly placed it beside Richard. No questions. No interruption. As she turned to leave, Richard spoke softly. "Thank you, Sarah." She smiled. For what? Richard looked at the window where Thomas was now working alone again. For seeing people. Sarah looked confused. She simply nodded and left the room. The door clicked shut. Richard looked at Daniel, then back at the closed door. Almost to himself, he whispered, "Some people build companies. A beat. Others build the people inside them." Present day. The courtroom stood perfectly still. Outside, news helicopters circled overhead. Television crews waited behind police barricades. Inside, no one moved. Michael Brooks carefully unfolded Richard Harrison's last will and testament. The sound of the paper echoed through the room. Daniel sat confidently. His fingers rested on the polished oak table. Victoria adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist. Both believed they already knew how this day would end. Sarah simply prayed no one would notice her. Michael adjusted his glasses. His voice was calm, measured. Richard Harrison left very specific instructions. His first instruction was simple. He looked around the courtroom. No interruptions. Daniel smiled. That won't be a problem. Michael looked at him. A faint smile crossed his face. Your father predicted you would say that. The smile disappeared from Daniel's face. Michael reached into the leather folder. Instead of the will, he removed a handwritten letter. The paper was folded neatly. Its edges were worn from being handled. Mr. Harrison instructed me to read this before anyone learns who inherits his estate. A reporter leaned forward. Pen stopped moving. Even the judge looked curious. Michael unfolded the letter. Richard's letter. If you're hearing these words, then I have already attended the only meeting no one can postpone. A few people lowered their heads. Richard's humor. Even in death. Michael continued. My children. Daniel straightened. Victoria folded her hands. 4 years. You believed I measured success by the size of our company. You were wrong. The room became even quieter. Richard stood on the balcony of the mansion. Below, employees laughed together during lunch. Sarah noticed a new gardener eating alone. Without hesitation, she carried her own lunch across the courtyard. She sat beside him. They shared a quiet conversation. No speeches. No dramatic music. Just kindness. Richard watched silently. He opened a small leather notebook. He wrote another line, then closed it. Back to courtroom. Michael continued. For 8 years, I stopped studying balance sheets. He turned the page. I started studying people. Daniel frowned. Victoria shifted uneasily. Sarah stared at the floor. Flashback. A young receptionist stood in the hallway crying after receiving devastating news on a phone call. Most people walked past. Sarah stopped. She placed a comforting hand on the woman's shoulder. She didn't ask questions. She simply stayed beside her. Several minutes later, the receptionist smiled through tears. From the end of the hallway, Richard quietly observed. Again, the notebook appeared. Another sentence. Another page. Back to courtroom. Michael's voice softened. Every promotion I gave was based on talent. He looked up. The greatest mistake of my career, he lowered his eyes again, was believing talent alone creates leaders. Daniel swallowed. For the first time, his confidence began to crack. Flashback. A winter evening. Snow covered the estate. A delivery driver slipped on the icy front steps. Packages scattered everywhere. Before security could react, Sarah hurried outside. She helped the driver gather every package. She offered him a cup of hot coffee before sending him back into the cold. The driver smiled gratefully. Richard watched from the upstairs window. He didn't interrupt. He simply smiled. Back to Courtroom. Michael turned to the final page. His voice almost trembled. There was one person who never behaved differently because I was rich. Sarah slowly closed her eyes. She already knew. Richard wasn't talking about money. He was talking about humanity. Michael continued. She treated the chairman, the janitor, the gardener, and the delivery driver with the same dignity. A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek. She quickly wiped it away. She didn't want anyone to see. Michael folded the letter. He looked toward the judge, then toward Daniel, finally, toward Sarah. He reached for the official will. The room seemed to stop breathing. He broke the wax seal, slowly, deliberately, then read the words that Richard Harrison himself had written. I, Richard Harrison, being of sound mind. Another pause. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence. Hereby appoint Sarah Mitchell. Daniel's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. As the sole controlling shareholder and chairwoman of Harrison Global Holdings. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then, a reporter dropped his notebook. A camera flash exploded. Someone gasped. Daniel stood so abruptly his chair crashed onto the marble floor. No! Bang! The judge's gavel thundered through the courtroom. Daniel's chair crashed against the marble floor. The sharp sound echoed through the courtroom. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room exploded. Reporters rushed toward the front. Camera flashes lit the courtroom like lightning. Voices overlapped. Questions flew from every direction. Did he say the maid? Is this legal? How much is the company worth? The judge slammed the gavel. Bang! Order! No one listened. Daniel's breathing grew heavier. His face had gone pale. He looked at Sarah as though she were a stranger who had somehow stolen his life. You knew! Sarah blinked. What? You knew this was coming. She shook her head immediately. I didn't. Daniel took a step closer. Stop pretending. His voice cracked. Not with anger, with betrayal. You spent years earning my father's trust. Sarah answered quietly. No. I spent years doing my job. The words landed harder than if she had shouted. Victoria stood, perfectly composed. Unlike Daniel, she didn't raise her voice. She adjusted her jacket, looked toward the judge, then toward Michael Brooks. We intend to challenge this will. The courtroom became quiet again. Michael simply nodded. Richard expected that. Victoria frowned. Expected? Michael reached into his briefcase. Daniel laughed bitterly. Of course. Another envelope. Even the reporters smiled nervously. Michael looked at him. The last one. He placed a sealed envelope on the podium. Across the front, in Richard's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words. Only open if my family objects. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Michael broke the seal. Inside, a flash drive. Nothing else. The courtroom lights dimmed. A large screen flickered to life. Richard Harrison appeared. He looked weaker than anyone remembered, but his eyes were full of peace. He smiled gently. Hello, everyone. Silence. If you're watching this, he chuckled softly, then my lawyer was right. A few uneasy smiles appeared around the courtroom. Richard continued. Daniel looked up instinctively. Before you blame Sarah, listen carefully. Richard leaned closer to the camera. She never asked me for money. Another pause. She never asked for a promotion. Another. She never asked to be remembered. Sarah lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. She remembered every conversation. None of them had been about inheritance. Richard stood in his study. A velvet box rested on his desk. Inside, a beautiful gold bracelet. "Sarah, you've served this family faithfully." He pushed the box toward her. "Please accept this." Sarah looked at the bracelet, then gently closed the box. She slid it back across the desk. Richard looked surprised. "You don't like it?" Sarah smiled warmly. "It's beautiful. Then why refuse it?" She answered without hesitation. "Because kindness stops being kindness the moment it's done for a reward." Richard didn't speak. He simply looked at her. A long moment passed. Then, he smiled. Back to Courtroom. Richard's recorded voice continued. "That," he paused, "was the day I stopped wondering who should lead this company." The room was silent. Even the reporters had forgotten to write. Daniel stared at the screen. His jaw tightened. His father wasn't defending Sarah. He was explaining himself. And there was a difference. Richard continued. "My children," his voice softened, "this decision was never made because I love you less." Daniel closed his eyes. "It was made because I expected more from you." A tear rolled slowly down Victoria's cheek. She quickly wiped it away before anyone noticed. The video ended. The screen faded to black. No music. No dramatic effect. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows the truth. Michael removed his glasses. He looked at Daniel. Not as a lawyer. As a man who had watched him grow up. "Your father never asked you to become him." A pause. "He asked you to become worthy of leading after him." Daniel looked across the courtroom. His eyes met Sarah's. For the first time, he didn't see the housekeeper. He saw the woman his father had trusted. He still disagreed. He still hurt. But certainty had begun to disappear. The judge broke the silence. "Mr. Harrison, do you wish to continue contesting the validity of the will?" Daniel looked at the floor, then at the screen where his father's image had disappeared. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The courtroom remained silent. Not because there was nothing left to say, because no one knew what to say next. The screen at the front of the room was black. Richard's final video had ended. Yet, it somehow still felt as though he was present. Daniel slowly lowered himself back into his chair. For the first time that morning, he looked exhausted. Not defeated. Just tired. His eyes drifted towards Sarah. She stood exactly where she had stood since the hearing began. Head lowered. Hands wrapped around the old leather folder. She looked less like the owner of a billion-dollar company, and more like someone wishing she could go home. Michael Brooks quietly closed Richard's file. He looked toward the judge. "Your Honor, before these proceedings conclude," he reached beneath the counsel table. Everyone watched. Even Daniel. Michael lifted a small wooden box onto the podium. It was old. Its corners were worn smooth by time. Across the lid, a brass plate carried a simple engraving. RH. Daniel frowned. "What's that?" Michael smiled faintly. "Richard called it." He rested his hand on the box. "His book of people." A ripple of curiosity moved through the courtroom. Michael opened the lid. Inside, dozens of small leather notebooks, each one neatly dated. Years, observations, memories. The courtroom leaned forward. Michael picked up one notebook. He opened it. Not to a financial report, not to investment figures. Instead, A single handwritten entry. Flashback. 5 years earlier. Rain poured outside Harrison Global headquarters. Employees hurried through the lobby. Most avoided looking at the elderly janitor struggling with a leaking bucket. Sarah didn't. She quietly walked over. Without saying a word, she took the mop from his hands. The old man looked embarrassed. "Miss Sarah, you'll get in trouble." She smiled. "Then we'll both get in trouble." Together, they cleaned the water before anyone slipped. Neither of them noticed Richard Harrison standing on the mezzanine above, watching, not speaking, simply observing. He removed the notebook from his jacket, wrote one sentence, closed it. Back to courtroom. Michael read aloud. March 18th. Sarah protected a man's dignity before protecting the company's floor. Silence. He turned another page. Christmas Eve. The mansion had emptied. Most employees had gone home. Sarah walked through the quiet kitchen. She noticed several wrapped gifts left behind for staff members. One name was missing. Thomas, the gardener. Sarah quietly bought another gift with her own money. She placed his name on it. No one saw her, except Richard, watching through the kitchen doorway, smiling. Back to courtroom. Another page. Michael read. December 24th. Leadership notices who has been forgotten. Victoria slowly lowered her eyes. A company banquet. Executives laughed around elegant tables. A young waiter accidentally spilled red wine across Daniel's expensive suit. The room froze. The young man's hands trembled. Before Daniel could react, Sarah stepped between them. She handed the waiter her own handkerchief, then quietly helped clean the mess. She whispered, "Accidents don't define people." The waiter nodded gratefully. Richard watched everything. Another notebook entry. Back to courtroom. Michael closed the notebook. He looked directly at Daniel. "Your father filled 27 of these." He gently rested his hand on the wooden box. "Not with numbers, with moments." Daniel stared at the notebooks. His voice was barely audible. "He watched all of this." Michael nodded. "Every chance he had." Then something unexpected happened. Sarah slowly walked toward the podium. She looked at the notebooks, then at Michael. Tears filled her eyes. "I never knew." Michael smiled gently. "You weren't supposed to." She shook her head. "I wasn't trying to impress him." Michael's answer came almost immediately. "Exactly." The room fell silent once more. Sarah turned toward Daniel. Her voice trembled. "Your father didn't choose me because I was better than you." Daniel looked at her. "He chose me." She paused, searching for the right words. "Because he believed people can become better." Daniel blinked. His father's words, in someone else's voice. Sarah looked around the courtroom, at the employees, the lawyers, the reporters, then quietly said, "I don't think Mr. Harrison wanted today to have winners." She smiled sadly. "I think he wanted all of us to leave differently than we arrived." No applause. No music. Just silence. The kind of silence that changes people. Courtroom had emptied. Most reporters had rushed outside to break the biggest business story in America. Television vans pulled away. Camera crews chased headlines. Inside, only a handful of people remained. The judge, Michael Brooks, Sarah, Daniel, Victoria, and several members of Harrison Global's board. For the first time all day, there was no audience. Only people. The silence felt strangely peaceful. Michael slid a thick folder across the polished table. It stopped in front of Sarah. Inside, the official documents. The ownership of Harrison Global Holdings. One signature. And history would change forever. Sarah stared at the papers. She didn't touch them. Daniel watched quietly. His shoulders seemed heavier now. The anger that had filled the courtroom was gone. In its place, questions. Michael spoke gently. "Richard trusted you with this." Sarah looked down, almost whispering, "I don't know if I can do this." Michael smiled. "That's exactly what Richard hoped you'd say." Sarah looked up, confused. "Why?" "Because people who crave power rarely deserve it." A long silence followed. Sarah slowly stood. She walked toward the large windows overlooking Manhattan. Thousands of people hurried through the streets below. Employees, taxi drivers, construction workers, delivery riders, people whose lives depended on companies like Harrison Global. Richard had seen numbers. Then he had learned to see people. Now, Sarah understood. This wasn't about inheriting wealth. It was about carrying responsibility. She turned back. Her decision made. She picked up the folder. Every eye followed her. Instead of sitting in Richard's chair, she walked directly toward Daniel. He looked up in surprise. She placed the folder in front of him. "Your father built this company." She paused. "You helped build its success." Daniel frowned. "What are you saying?" Sarah smiled softly. "I'm asking you to stay." The room froze. Daniel stared at her, unable to speak. Sarah continued. "Richard chose me to protect his values." She looked into Daniel's eyes. "He raised you to understand the business." Another pause. "I think this company needs both." Victoria slowly looked at her brother, then back at Sarah. Neither of them had expected mercy. One of the board members stood abruptly. "Miss Mitchell, you're offering executive authority to the very man who challenged you?" Sarah nodded. "Yes." "Why?" She smiled. "Because this company has had enough people trying to win." She looked around the room. "It's time someone tried to heal it." No one spoke. Daniel lowered his eyes. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Leadership is revealed when no one is watching." Slowly, he pushed the folder back towards Sarah. "No." Sarah looked surprised. Daniel took a slow breath. "You were the person Dad chose." His voice trembled. "For the first time in my life." He smiled sadly. "I think he was right." Silence. Then Daniel extended his hand. Not as an heir, not as an executive, but as a son trying to become the man his father believed he could still be. Sarah looked at his hand, then shook it. The handshake was simple, quiet, yet it meant more than every legal document signed that day. Michael Brooks reached into his briefcase one final time. Daniel laughed softly through watery eyes. "Please don't tell me there's another envelope." The room chuckled. Michael smiled. "The last one." He unfolded a small handwritten note. Richard's familiar handwriting filled the page. Michael read aloud. "If you're reading this, then they finally understand." A pause. "Don't build a company people fear. Build one people are proud to belong to." Another pause. "That," Michael smiled, "will be my greatest inheritance." No one spoke. No one needed to. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds. Its light poured through the courtroom windows. Not dramatically, simply, warmly, as if one chapter had ended and another had quietly begun. 6 months later, morning sunlight spilled across the glass walls of Harrison Global Holdings. The same building, the same logo, the same headquarters. Yet, everything inside felt different. The reception desk was alive with conversation. Employees greeted one another by name. Executives no longer hurried past junior staff without looking up. The atmosphere wasn't quieter. It was warmer. A young intern stepped nervously into the elevator, clutching a folder against his chest. As the doors began to close, a hand reached out and stopped them. The intern looked up. It was Sarah. She smiled. "Which floor?" "23, ma'am." Sarah laughed softly. "Then we're going to the same place." The intern relaxed immediately. He hadn't expected the chairwoman to ride the elevator with him. Sarah noticed the folder trembling slightly in his hands. "First presentation?" He nodded. "I'm terrified." Sarah smiled. "Good." He blinked. She continued. "It means you care." The elevator doors opened. The young man stepped out smiling. The boardroom? Daniel stood before the executive team. Large financial reports filled the screen behind him. He finished presenting the quarterly results. Silence. Then applause. Not because profits had reached record levels, but because employee satisfaction had reached record levels too. Daniel looked towards Sarah. She nodded once. Proud? Not of the numbers. Of the people. A board member spoke. "There's one final item on today's agenda." He placed a folder on the table. "The Employee Education Initiative." Sarah opened it. Thousands of scholarships, leadership training, mental health support, emergency family assistance. Daniel smiled. "Dad always said." He paused. A gentle smile crossed his face. "If a company grows while its people struggle, it isn't really growing." Sarah looked toward the empty chair at the head of the table. Richard's chair. No one had sat there since his passing. It remained empty. Not out of sadness. Out of respect. The garden. That evening, Sarah walked alone through the gardens behind Harrison Estate. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. Birds settled into the branches as the sun dipped below the horizon. She stopped at a newly planted oak tree. At its base, a bronze plaque. Richard Harrison. "The greatest investment you'll ever make is in people." Sarah gently placed her hand against the plaque. Footsteps approached behind her. Daniel, Victoria, Michael Brooks, then Thomas the gardener, the elderly janitor, the receptionist Sarah had once comforted, the delivery driver, the young waiter. One by one, people whose lives Richard had quietly changed, and people whose lives Sarah had touched without ever knowing she was being watched. No speeches, no ceremony, just people, standing together. Daniel looked toward the oak tree. His voice barely rose above the wind. "I spent years trying to inherit Dad's company." He smiled sadly. "I never realized I should have been trying to inherit his character." Victoria slipped her arm through her brother's. For the first time in years, they weren't arguing. They were healing. Michael opened the small wooden box. Inside rested Richard's leather notebooks. He removed the final blank notebook. He handed it to Sarah. She looked puzzled. "This one's empty." Michael nodded. "Richard told me." He smiled warmly. "Every legacy needs someone willing to write the next chapter." Sarah held the notebook close to her heart. If you're hearing this, then my story is over. Richard spoke one final time. "Don't spend your life asking, 'How much did I earn?' A pause. Ask, Whose life is better because I was here? If this story reminded you that character matters more than wealth, you'll love our next story. Click here and continue the journey with awesome tales.